Well, honestly, Seth, I'm really thankful to chat with you. We're sitting chatting today with Seth A. Smith, the writer, co-writer, and director of Tin Can. Seth, thank you so much for chatting with me. I really do appreciate it. Uh,
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Great. Well, I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about the origin of the story. I just looking at the timelines I've seen for the film, it surprised me, and maybe this is wrong. I like it seemed like the film was completed in late 2020, which would have you of starting this before the pandemic. Is that the case?
Yeah, we started. We were in production in 2018, and we started shooting early 2019, I believe. And so yeah, it was before. It was definitely the experience of the pandemic's been weird because for the movie we've kind of spent 2 years in a fake pandemic uh, in this production and the writing of it. And then once we were kind of getting ready to share it, and we were going on to post and or finishing up post, this thing came along, and we're like, oh, okay, that's really weird. And then it didn't go away. So I feel like I've had an extended pandemic in that sense.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, the origin, the origin of this, coming up with the idea. I don't know. I get that asked a lot because this. I don't know where ideas come from. I feel like they're in a different dimension, and they kind of drip into your consciousness, and you just take what you can get. And for me, movies kind of start with a small idea or a feeling or a situation, and then they kind of grow in my mind and branch out until it becomes kind of a living thing, and then it dictates what it wants to be, and you have to kind of obey. For this, I think it started with an idea that like a person in a barrel was like the image that we Darcy Spido, my co-writer, and I were kind of had in mind, and we kind of took it from there.
well, does the I'm sure that you get asked this too, but does the film take on new meaning to you after everything we've been through?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. Well, when back in the very early days, I was kind of actually the inspiration came from factory farming. I was kind of thinking of it, some of the brutal things animals have to go through these processes in the context of a horror movie, and what if a human had to go through those processes? That was kind of my starting point with it, and then it's quickly became a whole science fiction, a totally fictitious fantasy thing, and yeah, and then I had this quarantine thing. But yeah, it has been interesting with this pandemic. It has kind of taught me that your film really does kind of change after it's completed. It's like it goes, the meaning of it can change, the way it's perceived can change. I know that movies age as they get older. You look at an 80s movie and it doesn't hold up in certain ways or whatever. But this was very rapid. We went through this quarantine phase, and oh yeah, this movie, people are isolated in these small spaces. They're talking to each other over audio, like an audio play or something. And I can see how that relates to this living in quarantine. And but now that we're kind of living with this disease and we're kind of out a little more, it's kind of it has a more, you're living with the thing that's constantly stalking you, or you just have to find a way to kind of get through it and exist with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sharing with Laura before we started it, our own family with a stuffy nose, and all of a sudden we're under all these protocols and in quarantine, and it's like, man, 2 years ago I would have popped a Sudafed and left the house, and it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's definitely weird.
yeah. Well, I thought the film was really, really interesting. I actually really liked the film. I was wondering why you
Cool.
chose to break the story into two parts. I thought that was really interesting. There's sort of two primary chapters to the film. What
Well,
was it why did
well,
you feel that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll maybe throw some spoilers in here, maybe if that's cool,
Sure.
if that's works. But yeah, I mean, researching this, the whole objective was to kind of make this film kind of budgetary and keep it to a small kind of single space environment just to keep it cheap. And because we didn't have a huge Hollywood budget, and sci-fi are typically very expensive. And and yeah, so I was looking at films, that had done that, like Buried or Kill Bill had some moments in a coffin. There's a few person in a coffin type films, and they're and the ones that are really specifically that. And now there's been Oxygen. Which is kind of has some parallels too, because when you're working in this genre, there's only so much you can do in a small space, right? But But yeah, I kind of watching some of these films and seeing how they had done it. Like I definitely didn't want to do exactly that because I just feel like I wanted to do something more. And I was kind of more interested in like the terror not being claustrophobic inside this thing, and more of what's outside the thing in a way. And maybe the being locked in this thing is the safest thing that could you could be you could be in a safe space in a way. So and yeah, I was thinking about space and imprisonment and prisons within prisons. How small can you know a container be, like a prison of armor, or because that's pretty tight, and so we kind of developed into this idea of, yeah, following this captive once she escapes, and then where that can evolve to and where that can go to. And as we kept, I think originally it was very, it's like 10% of the film at the end or something, but we started thinking, this is actually a very interesting thing to explore. And I tend to like it more because it's a bit more experimental, and you get to have a little more fun with it. But we did definitely notice that it's, drastically different than the first kind of film, and it's almost a second film and maybe a second genre. So, um, before I shot it, I started, just being interested in making it almost like a two-part film or two films in one, and just having these two chapters, and I think it can be read as a whole, but you could also see it as two kind of episodes, and yeah, that's where that came from, I guess.
Yeah, it ties together well. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I mean, I was watching it and I thought, man, like, I love the sort of one person enclosed genre. And that first one, I really was like, man, this is okay. We're going for like a Buried vibe, and then it jukes so far to the left. It almost goes, but it's like if Buried met like Doctor Who in good ways. I mean, and
Yeah,
I was like,
sure.
whoa, all right. Uh, which was really fascinating. I mean, that I was wondering too, like, was it a challenge to shoot that way? I mean, like you said, you didn't know, I know, of course, that you didn't have a huge budget, but you do an excellent job of maintaining the sense of claustrophobia, but also not leaving it in one shot. That's the challenge of these things: is how do you keep the interest visually, and you're moving it around, you're knocking things over, you're doing this stuff. So was it a challenge for you to visualize it in that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, practically I mean, this film, I say this a lot, is just, it has been the hardest feature I've ever edited because it just becomes more of like almost like a math problem. You're just like in a very small space, and if you're cutting from one shot to the other, they have to be different enough, but it's like there's only so many angles you get in one of these
Yeah.
things. And so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was definitely challenging for the tin cans. We actually ended up making a few of them. There'd be, for the different gags for rolling or filling them up with water. I think I was speaking with Anna in an interview, and she was talking about her most challenging role was this scene where the can flips over, and we're seeing into the can as it flips over, but water's splashing, so we actually had to have a clear lid on there. So she was actually totally 100% stuck in this vault as we rolled it around with water. And she was super brave for it, and it was really fun to work with her too because she's up for all of the hijinks and just the crazy stuff we had to do with it.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I loved about.
But in a lot of ways, some of the, the, oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, there was a lag, so you paused, and I thought you were done. Please continue.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, just in a lot of ways, just the restrictions they brought a lot of new ideas, but a lot of them were actually kind of um, solutions to not having a lot of money for a movie like this. Like a lot of the dialogue could be over, was heard and not seen. So some of that was done in ADR afterwards, where we didn't have to have a lot of actors at once. We did it in a studio, and a lot of the, Fret's character, she's played by a body double in the armor for half of it. So that was there were some, different tricks in that scenario that made things easier for us in a way. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I loved about the film too was when you pull back, there's a definite emphasis here on privatized healthcare, with a in the film. And I was just wondering if you could talk about that influence, or when you were writing it, and maybe the tension between commerce and compassion that sort of exists within the story.
well, I don't know. I mean, as far as those kind of themes, some of those, I wouldn't say I totally tried to bake a political statement in there. I was just, here in Nova Scotia, it's a small province where I live, and a lot of doctors kind of move elsewhere, and so there is a lack of. I mean, at the time, at least in now with this pandemic, there's a lack of healthcare workers, and you're waiting, a month to get in to see someone for a certain procedure or something, and that kind of resonated with me. So I had been thinking of this particular fantasy pandemic and with that in mind. But I think I was thinking more of yeah, just authority and just because there's a lot of people in charge of other people and restricting people from getting on buses and the authority of people over other people. And I had been thinking of even extending that to, animals, back to that factory farming things, people's authority over animals, and thinking about, an authority a disease has over people in a way, like,
Mm.
which we're kind of going through right now, where you can't reason with it. You're just, you're doing what you can with it. And thinking about just who, in a way, who deserves, we're such a dominant species as people, who deserves to be in, be in control of this world or be on top. And maybe it's time for another organism to be in charge.
Well, I appreciate that. That's really interesting. Well, I mean, the film is, I would say it's a blast. It's not like fun. It's it's sort of a, but it's really well done. It's dark and
No,
edgy.
well said.
It's bring your kids to it. No, it's very, it's
I
always,
mean,
go
my
ahead.
son plays a role in most of my films, and yeah, he hasn't seen it yet, just the good parts. But it's his parts. So let's just not all of his parts actually.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. Thank you so much, Seth. I wish you the best.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for having me, and yeah, hope you enjoy your viewers enjoy the movie as well.
All right, great. Thanks so much.